And to give a longer answer, you do have things to look forward to in the world update this year. If I had to sum it up in one word, the word would be heroes with a capital H.
Yeah. Oh, you have started rumors about Hero 101.
Oh no.
Oh God.
No, no, no. This will be a new world to Wizard,
I've
not a new game.
I've spoken poorly. Yes.
No, no, no. Just let's clear that up right now.
Nip that in the bud.
Yeah, I don't think there's
Yes.
any nipping it in any buds. There's Hero 101 gonna be in the
So
chat.
I was just
That's okay.
Professor Falmea may have been joking, but believe it or not, Hero101 is an actual game. If we want to learn more about it though, we have to go back to the release of KingsIsle's last MMO. It's the beginning of 2012, and KingsIsle Entertainment is at the height of its popularity. If you want any proof, all you have to do is search the term Wizard 101 on Google Trends, or check out the game's update notes, or look at the awards and reviews from years past. Wizard 101 was in its 5th year of service and had amassed a total 25 million registered players. With multiple world updates in the pipeline and a continuously increasing revenue stream, the pressure was on for KingsIsle to keep performing bigger and better. With such a successful product on their hands, what would be the next step for this company? Aside from constant updates to Wizard 101, the only logical next step would be to diversify. And they did just that. On April 25th, 2012, KingsIsle published a new video to their YouTube channel titled Pyre 101 New Game from KingsIsle. Reactions from the Wizard 101 community poured in, nearly all of them overwhelmingly positive. They were making a new game in a similar style to Wizard, and it takes place in the Spiral. Players couldn't be more excited. In October 2012, Pyre 101 released to critical acclaim. While not as popular as its sister game, it still proved that KingsIsle was no one-hit wonder. They were not a small company like before, but rather a fully fledged studio with over 250 employees and multiple award-winning games. With 2 family-friendly MMOs under their belt and large updates constantly in the works for both, it is obvious KingsIsle had no plans of slowing down. So what was next? Unbeknownst to anyone at the time, a 3rd KingsIsle MMO had already been set into motion. In fact, it began prior to the release of Pyre 101. Even before Pyre 101 was announced, fans of Wizard 101 always speculated about whether another 101 game would ever be released. This speculation was definitely warranted considering the huge success of Wizard. Now that Pyre 101 was officially the 2nd game in the 101 franchise, it makes sense to see even more in the future. But which would it be? Ninja 101? Hero 101? Astronaut 101? And how long would it be until it surfaced? 1 month after announcing Pyre 101, before the game was released, KingsIsle began work on their 3rd MMO. This was a new project internally known as either Super Hero 101 or just Heroes. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to refer to it as Hero 101. According to the portfolio of former employee Jeff Haskell, there was a cancelled project in development at KingsIsle between May 2012 and December 2014. While at first it may not be clear this project was Hero 101, other sources corroborate the information on this page. For example, the names of several Hero 101 classes are seen lower down on the page as titles for now removed YouTube videos. So, how much do we know about Hero 101? Quite a lot actually, probably more than you may realize. I'm going to try and explain what we know about Hero 101 in chronological order, but in some cases I may go off track for the sake of context when necessary. I'll try not to get too stuck in the details, so please stick with me. And by the way, all of the images and sources used in this video can be found in the description. Any websites mentioned have been archived in case the originals get taken down. So, there's no need to fear about losing any of this information. You can check it all out if you're interested. Anyways, back to the video. It's now January 2013. Around this time, nobody in the public knew anything about Hero101 or that it even existed, save for one key aspect, which, in hindsight, should have made it clear to everyone long ago that KingsIsle were working on another game after Pirate 101. This is the careers page for KingsIsle's corporate website during January 2013. It's filled to the brim with new job openings, much more than what we see today. In total, there were about a dozen open positions for nearly every possible department. What's so important about this page, you may ask? If you take note of the description under each application, most of them explicitly mention something about an exciting, new, family-focused AAA MMO video game. That's right, these job openings detailed a new MMO in the works, not an existing one. And to clear up any doubts, no, it's not as if these are old copy and pasted Pirate 101 applications. That's because they name drop both Wizard 101 and Pirate 101 as reasons to work for the company in the first place. These applications were almost certainly for the new Super Hero101 project, yet not many people in the community ever picked up on this. In spite of this aggressive hiring strategy, KingsIsle wasn't infallible from losing their existing employees. The biggest loss of all was when in January 2013, creative director J. Todd Coleman announced his resignation from the company. Coleman had been the driving force and creative genius behind both Wizard 101 and Pirate 101, so his departure likely had a huge impact on the games ever since. This was especially obvious in the following 2 years, 2014 and 2015, as KingsIsle's focus shifted towards the mobile market. We have lots of images and whatnot to talk about, but no clear idea on when most of them were developed. We can only infer based on the quality of certain images when they may have been taken. With that in mind, I've done my best to order the following sources in some sort of chronological order. Let's start with what we think is one of the earliest images of Hero101. A screenshot of a user interface mockup found on former employee Paul StankieWicz's portfolio. Thanks to the Wayback Machine, we were able to dig through old files on Paul's website and find several SWF files, including this one. Instead of dissecting the interface itself, what's more important is the background, which contains an odd image to say the least. At first glance, it appears to show some sort of buff Superman-like character in a blue suit facing off against a skeletal pirate from Wizard 101. The dual circle they're fighting on resembles the typical 8-person design you see in Wizard 101, yet it's a completely different design altogether. And to top it all off, the area they're fighting in looks to be in Unicorn Way, obviously before the 2018 revamp. Similar to Pirate 101's prototype, the beginning of Hero101 seems to take from Wizard 101, both in terms of inspiration and physical assets. If you have a keen eye, you may have noticed remnants of the usual dual circle texture underneath this new one, showing just how thrown together this may have been for the sake of testing new ideas. As a personal aside, this image seems much more primitive when compared to Pirate 101's prototype. I don't know why that'd be the case, especially seeing as Hero101 was developed after Pirate 101, but I just thought it was interesting to note. Regardless though, what we can take away from this mockup is that Hero101's combat system may have resembled Wizards in some way. At the very least, it seems like it would have been turn-based akin to KingsIsle's other 2 MMOs. There are a few other images we found on Paul StankieWicz's website through the Wayback Machine. A higher quality version of the health globe seen in the first image, along with a couple map mockups. If I'm going through any of these too fast, remember that you can look at the full quality files for yourself. Overall, these images come from what I refer to as the prototype era of Hero101. The remaining content from here on out looks vastly different from the first few mockups on Paul's portfolio, and likely resemble what the game looked like towards the end of its development cycle. The remaining UI mockups from Paul can actually still be found on his YouTube channel as of this video's upload. But like everything else in this video, they've been backed up in the case they get taken down later. In total, there are 5 videos to look through, and boy, There is a lot to unpack. Let's go one by one. Titled New Power 4-2. This video shows the player receiving a new ability. It appears to grant 2 additional speed, although it's unknown what exactly that would do for you. Finally, the ability is placed next to what's presumably other abilities in the bottom right of the screen. Even though receiving an ability is the focus of this video, it actually shows us so much about Hero101 as a whole. The art style of the UI, and hints of gameplay mechanics seen in the other 101 games. I'm not going to analyze the art style too much, but I do want to point out that it seems like a slight departure from KingsIsle's typical style. While, yes, it is cartoony in nature like Wizard and Pirate, the characters seem rather lanky. Not only that, but the textures on models are quite simplistic and clean. In terms of the UI, there seems to be abilities on both the lower left and lower right sides of the screen. In the top right is a crown icon, presumably for the crown shop. Again, on the lower left is a red meter that may be the player's health, complemented by a similar green meter on the right side of the screen, perhaps some sort of mana or energy used for activating abilities. And lastly, in the bottom center is the well-known quest arrow seen in all KingsIsle MMOs. It's pointing to someone named Professor Taz, but don't be mistaken, that's not the NPC standing directly in front of the player in the screenshot. Next up is a video titled Snag Card 1, which shows the player receiving an unnamed power. As this was a work in progress, it's unknown whether there is a difference between this power and the speed ability seen in the previous video. Other than that, there's not much to mention. In Snag Options 1, we see a brand new background image, some updates to the interface, and a look at the options page. The options menu looks to have tabs in a similar layout to Wizard and Pirate, but what's really interesting is the neat Pac-Man animation going on at the left. There doesn't seem to be a reason for this to exist, aside from serving as a neat bit of charm to look at as you look through the different options. Definitely pretty neat. The rest of the interface is mostly the same as before, except for a few changes and new additions. For example, the red and green meters from before are now simplified and rectangle shaped, with the green one changing to blue. There are also 2 new buttons, one above each meter. One is an image of a person, probably to view info about your character. The other may be a way to access the options menu. Also, in the bottom right are the same icons used for switching between tabs in the options menu, possibly as a means to quickly access specific options. While the quest arrow is the same as before, this time it has a different goal. Defeat the Red Watch hacker and collect the active code in Nexus Vault. In just one quest goal, we already have the name of an enemy and a zone name. And of course, there's the background image to look at. This time, it seems like the player character is male, and we can see a slightly different angle of the same room. The NPC in front of the player actually has a question mark above their head this time, the same iconic one seen in both Wizard and Pirate. There is no doubt this is a KingsIsle game with that iconic graphic to be seen. The final 2 videos, Hero Card Fix 1E and Hero Option Fix 1, unfortunately don't contain anything new compared to the prior 3 videos. Those are all of Paul's public videos, but it's not quite the extent of what his portfolio has to offer. On the current version of his portfolio is a compilation image of his Hero101 mockups, which takes screen caps from what we've already seen in the prior videos. However, one of these images is something we haven't yet seen, a map of the area. According to the map, the area in the screenshot is called the Science Center. It's also labeled First Area, which implies this could be the first area players find themselves in when starting the game. Additionally, there is an image of a globe to the left side of the map, akin to the Pac-Man animation we saw earlier on the options page. This could just have been a decoration added without much thought, but on the other hand, it may imply that Hero101 takes place on Earth rather than in the spiral. At the very least, I'm inclined to say the game does not take place in the spiral, based on the slight shift in art style. But that's still not all from Paul. as mentioned earlier, we've retrieved several old SWF files from older versions of his website. These contain most of the same animations seen in the prior videos, but after extracting the assets from them, it turns out some have extra images we never would have seen otherwise. For example, here's a different image of the male player character in the same zone. The angle is slightly different, but more importantly, we can finally see the name of this NPC we've been looking at for a while now. Her name is Cricket. We also have higher quality versions of everything seen in the videos. This one is the highest quality we have, and surprisingly, is the only image that upon looking at the file's properties is actually dated. This specific image was captured on March 13th, 2014 at 9:37 a.m. That does it for all of Paul StankieWicz's work, but there's still a lot more to go over from other former KingsIsle employees. First, a message from our sponsor.
Hey, do you want to see something really, really, really cool?
Yeah, we want to see something cool. That was Elie Akilian, KingsIsle's former CEO. He founded KingsIsle and stuck with the company until January 2021, when it was acquired by MGI. In July 2014, he was interviewed by the AGBU as a way to promote his Armenian heritage. What does this have to do with Hero101? Believe it or not, this seemingly inconspicuous interview actually gave us our first ever look at the game. Take a look at the monitor on Elie's right side. It may be a bit difficult to make out, but it actually shows a glimpse at a Hero101 zone. That's right. This random promotional image of KingsIsle's former CEO actually contains an image of the Science Center, the same large zone we saw earlier in several of Paul's mockups. For the past 7 years, this look at Hero101 was under our noses the entire time. Not only that, but it just so happens to match up with other screenshots we've only recently got our hands on. Had this been another zone entirely, we may not have ever realized that it was for Hero101 at all. Speaking of other zones, would you like to take a look at all of the other areas we have screenshots of? The following images come from former KingsIsle employee Chris Douglas. They're described as a few sets from a cancelled low-end PC superhero game. In total, there are about a dozen images in the collection, showcasing 3 separate zones. Let's go over each zone individually. The first 3 images showcase what I'll call the Speedster Zone. The premise appears to be a large and windy racetrack enclosed within a large glass dome. Plastered across the area are several logos of a letter S with a lightning bolt going through it. This is likely the logo of the Speedster class, which we'll talk more about later. Next up are 3 images of a training area. This is a multi-level room with a pretty basic color scheme, definitely the least eye-catching zone thus far. There are a lot of empty shelves placed on all floors, likely intended for various equipment. Armor stands are also spread throughout the room, making it likely that this zone is used for training. In the second image, we see the same male player character seen in previous images. Despite being the smallest one yet, this military zone has a total of 5 images. Something pretty strange to note is the conflicting iconography around the room. In the very center of the floor is a large logo of an eagle, which can also be found on the monitors and flags. However, there's a different logo seen on a couple of hanging banners. Perhaps in the middle of development they decided to change the logo for whatever organization this may be, or it's actually intentional to indicate that it's part of a larger organization. Either way, the excessive use of logos, high-tech equipment, and map behind the front desk likely means this was some kind of military-themed area. We also get a better look at the player character's face. Unfortunately, that's just about all of the game zones that we have screenshots for. In total, we've seen the Science Center, Speedster Zone, Training Area, and Military Zone. It's a shame we don't have more, but at least what we have seen paints a very clear picture of the art style. Up until now, I've been focusing on the different zones in Hero101, but zones aren't all what make up a game. Next, I'm going to talk about the few character pieces found on other employees' portfolios. There aren't many, but the few we have speak volumes about the game's style, just like the zones have. Andrew Cook is another former KingsIsle employee. While at KingsIsle, Andrew did character art for various projects, including Hero101, Rise and Destroy, and, you guessed it, Hero101. In 2015, he uploaded an animation reel of various works he made during his time at the company. For the most part, the contents of this reel contain characters you've already seen before, save one. If you look closely at the video, whenever a different character pops up, the logo for its respective franchise is put alongside it. When animations for the Monkey King are shown, the Pirate 101 logo appears. When animations for a Rise and Destroy monster are shown, the Rise and Destroy logo appears. However, halfway into the video is an animation of a lanky female, except this time, no logo accompanies her. Not only that, but if you compare her to the other Hero101 player characters we've seen, the resemblance is spot on, both in terms of the body structure and textures of her clothing. Without a doubt, this character was created for Hero101. Next up is Zack Wallig, yet another former KingsIsle employee and character artist. On Artstation, Zack has an album of various work he did while at KingsIsle. Most of what's on here comes from Wizard101 between 2011 and 2014, but one character at the bottom stands out. This is Rennie the UFO Tracker, a character for an unannounced project, according to Zack. Not only do we have an image of him, but at the bottom of the page is an embedded model viewer that lets you view his model as you please. Considering this character has been placed in an album that's explicitly for KingsIsle work, and it's definitely not anything we've seen before, I think it's safe to assume this too was created for Hero101. Let's also not forget Rennie's lanky stature, which seems a common theme with all the characters we've seen thus far. So, in total, we have Cricket, two other NPCs in the background of the Science Center, the female character model, male character model, a possible variation of the female character model, and finally, Rennie and his pet dog. That's all of the character models we've seen for Hero101, but we do have concept art for a couple more, thanks to former KingsIsle employee Billy George. First up is Ancient Noto, a female character that seems to wear gear that fits the style of other characters we've seen so far. Plus, she's pretty tall and lanky, like most of the others, which fits into the Hero101 aesthetic we keep seeing. And the second one is Combat Drone, presumably an enemy with a white and blue color scheme. Billy George has a lot of concept art for varying games on his portfolio, so you may be asking yourself why we think this piece in particular comes from Hero101. In just a few minutes, everything will start to make a lot more sense with what I'm going to talk about next. This next source is by far the largest yet, and contains the most information we have on Hero101. If you've been wondering why we've been so confident in everything talked about up to this point, well, this source is the reason. Demo of Perl Project is the name of a YouTube video uploaded by former KingsIsle employee Jeff Haskell. The length clocks in at just under 90 seconds, yet contains a trove of information on the game, all in the form of text. Everything I've shown so far has been visual, but this is vastly different. Packed into this video are the names of dozens of zones, NPCs, quests, powers, and much more. So much of the information seen here corroborates with everything else I've talked about so far. The Science Center, Cricket, and even what I just mentioned a minute ago, the Combat Drone enemy. All of them have name entries visible in Demo of Perl Project. There's so much to go over that I wouldn't be able to review it all in this video, but I definitely recommend going through it yourself and looking at all the different names of everything. But if you want the highlights, well, here you go. The main world of Hero101 is called Nexus City. Despite being the main area we've seen in screenshots, the Science Center is not the main hub area. Rather, the hub is called Nexus University, and it branches out to most other areas in the game. The general mechanics of the game are very similar to Wizard and Pirate, in that there are sigils for entering instances, quests that reward XP and gold, and so on. In fact, it appears Hero101 used an updated version of Wizard101's infrastructure, similar to how Pirate 101 did the same for its development. If we judge by the length of the scroll bar in the video, we can make some rough estimates on how much content was in the game. There are about 12 major zones with 48 interiors, totaling around 60 total zones for Nexus City and the game as a whole, assuming there are no other worlds. There are around 100 NPCs, 94 mobs, 148 quests, and 342 talents. Note again that these are rough estimations, especially for NPCs, as the spacing between them in the video was inconsistent. As for talents and powers, they seem to have the same entries as each other for whatever reason, so it's difficult to say what was going on there. The video itself was recorded in late October 2014, which, as we know, was towards the end of Hero101's development cycle, said to have lasted until December 2014 before being cancelled. Although, it's worth noting that most pages in the video have a last modified date at the end of August 2014. So, it's likely that development slowed down around this time before the project was officially cancelled. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Again, I would recommend going through the video yourself if you want to see every nook and cranny of information available to us. Now that most of the big stuff is out of the way, there are a couple more bits of information to go over before ending off the video. Trust me, we're almost done here. In 2017, an unknown member of the Wizard101 community was researching KingsIsle employees when they stumbled across the resume of a voiceover artist, Julie Leonard. Julie had done voice work for Wizard101 before, but something else stuck out on her resume. She claimed to have also done voiceover for a game called Hero101. Shortly after attention was brought to this, Julie removed it from her resume. Luckily, we have an archived version from when it was still there. This will be our second to last topic of the video. While it may not have as much specific information as a screenshots or demo of Perl project video, it tells us a lot about the broader scope of Hero101 as a whole. Take a look at an employee's own testimonial about what the game was supposed to be. Before I go any further, I want to be crystal clear about the circumstances surrounding this testimonial. In 2017, a former disgruntled KingsIsle employee approached a few members of the community in order to rant about their experiences while at the company. While doing so, this employee broke NDA and talked about a lot of interesting things related to KingsIsle, one of them being Hero101. Out of respect for this person, they will remain anonymous and will simply be referred to as the former employee. I can confirm though, without any shadow of a doubt, that this is an actual former employee and not some impersonator. In addition, this person gave permission many years ago for their testimonial to be shared with others. Including it here is not going against their wishes. With that in mind, let's continue. According to the former employee, Hero101 was practically finished, and they were confused as to why KingsIsle didn't release it. They described the game as an MMO RPG with interesting mechanics similar to DC Universe. They also called it a superhero-themed Pirate 101 and Wizard 101, which makes sense considering the game uses an advanced version of Wizard's infrastructure. Apparently, the game was not even called Hero101 internally, but rather just Heroes. In addition, it seems the higher-ups wanted to make the game more mobile-friendly. This also fits well with what we know of KingsIsle in 2013, as they were slowly starting to invest in more mobile projects. The former employee notes that before J. Todd Coleman departed from the company, he wanted to invest more in Hero101 and Pirate 101, whereas the CEO, Elie Akilian, wants to invest in mobile. Later on, the former employee confirmed some of the power names we already knew about from other sources, such as telekinesis. They referred to the combat system as being very dumbed down, and said the game as a whole played similar to Wizard 101. There also weren't any additions such as crafting, PvP, or housing. Rather, the game was more bare bones with a free-to-play area, presumably Nexus City. They do, however, complement the animations being really good. The premise of the game was apparently going to be fighting aliens in a giant metropolis setting. While the former employee doesn't remember a main villain, they do recall fish alien men in space helmets running around the city that players would have to fight. Lastly, they confirmed that Hero101 was in development for 2 years, which corroborates with what we know from various other sources. They also confirmed the game was in a prototype or early beta state, and that KingsIsle had a huge team working on it at one point. And that's pretty much all the employee had to say on Hero101. They did leave other compliments about the work culture at KingsIsle in another scrapped game, but discussion of that is for another time. If you want to read verbatim what the former employee said for yourself, screenshots of the conversation can be found in the description just like everything else. In June 2021, KingsIsle's new producer, Renee Wooten, released his first producer's letter detailing what would be coming soon to Wizard101's summer update. After scrolling through the letter, there's a teaser image for the next Lemuria prequest. In the image, a character from Wizard101 known as the Old One is looking towards an entrance of sorts. But wait, doesn't that look familiar? I could swear we've seen that half-circle entrance somewhere before. Never mind, it's just coincidence. Anyways, let's talk about what's behind the entrance the Old One is looking at. When Test Realm officially released in July, players were able to venture through the new quest and see for themselves what was beyond that door. This is a zone called the Old One's Lab. It's an underground bunker with all sorts of advanced computers and machinery. Scattered around the lab are a variety of different props, crates, monitors, computer towers, all unique props KingsIsle crafted specifically for this one room. Right? Wrong. The Old One's lab is almost entirely taken directly from Hero101. Almost every single texture and prop in this room is a Hero101 asset, from the monitor you interact with for the quest, to the bonus textures they left in that didn't even make it into the final product. We can't confirm whether the infrastructure itself was taken from Hero101, meaning the room minus all the props, but considering all the other props are from the game, it's pretty likely. In total, there are nearly 100 unique Hero101 textures found in the Old One's lab. Not only can this be determined by cross-referencing prior screenshots of the game with the props in the room, but the file names of the textures prove it as well. Nearly every single texture in this room, save for the plastered on octopus motifs, have the next prefix in their names. Where else have we seen the next prefix on assets? The Demo of Perl project video, of course. With the release of the Wizard101 Summer Test Realm, we were given the largest dump of Hero101 assets ever. And yes, that is to say we've seen some Hero101 assets before. The Wizard City HD revamp and Caramel updates both used a handful of textures from Hero101, but it was never as many as what we've seen with the Old One's lab. And there's likely more on the way too. There are strong clues that suggest this asset dump is only the beginning. The Old One's lab also serves as an interior in the Lemuria bundle house. Bundle houses for upcoming worlds are typically a decent representation of the upcoming world's theme. So, if a technology-centric room made up of Hero101 assets is a reflection of what's to come in Lemuria, I would expect to see other reused hero zones coming with a full world update. Of course, it's possible that could not be the case, so don't take this prediction as fact. From UI mockups to in-game screenshots, and employee portfolios to an employee testimonial, there was a ton of information to cover on Hero101. Lots of what you saw in this video was gathered over many years, so it feels great to finally consolidate all of it into the form of a video like this. Aside from our anonymous employee testimonial, all of the information seen today was actually publicly accessible at one point or another. It just takes quite a bit of effort to find it all. And with that in mind, I would like to give a big thank you to a dedicated member of the Wizard101 community, Justin. Justin was the driving force behind finding many of the sources here, and we definitely wouldn't know as much as we do about Hero101 if it wasn't for him. And of course, thank you to all of the other people who also helped to uncover information on the game. A lot of other people have helped out over the years. We at the Amoplex appreciate their hard work and dedication. Last but not least, nothing seen here would exist to begin with without the employees who crafted the game worlds we love. Thank you to the past and present employees of KingsIsle for creating Wizard 101, Pirate 101, and the unfortunately cancelled game of Hero 101. Will Hero 101 ever see the light of day past the reuse of its assets? It's hard to say. At the moment, KingsIsle's focus appears to be on supporting Wizard 101, while attempting to bring a few smaller updates to Pirate 101. I doubt we may ever see a new game from them for a while, but only time will tell. With the MGI acquisition though, I'd never rule anything out for certain. We hope you enjoyed this video on Hero 101, which has been a first for the Amoplex in many ways, as it was even voiced for once. What are your thoughts on the video subject? Do you have any information on Hero 101 that has yet to be uncovered? Maybe even anything on the elusive Wizard 101 Alpha disc, or something similar for Pirate 101. If you do, don't hesitate to contact us on Twitter at the Amoplex, so that we can help stop rare content like this from being lost to time. Lately, we've been broadening our horizons to cover almost everything KingsIsle, like when we discussed MGI's acquisition of the company earlier this year, or even the creation of this very video. As a result, we want to know whether there would be interest in similar videos. Feedback in the comments would be greatly appreciated. On the topic of preserving all things KingsIsle, I am excited to announce a new project that we have been planning for a very long time. A brand new wiki hub for everything KingsIsle, Spiral 404. Starting with a wiki for Wizard 101 titled Wizard 404, we are aiming for a fresh and modern take, much unlike the existing wikis hosted by the folks at Central. We have a lot of unique features planned that we think will make our wiki the definitive place for everything Wizard 101. An example of where Wizard 404 will shine is with automatic data entry. Using the knowledge we have gained from working on the Amoplex, our wiki will automatically create thousands of pre-made entries for every item, enemy, spell, and more, all using information directly from the game files, and complete with details never before available to the public, such as exact mob stats. There are many more features planned, but I don't want to take up more time in this video. If you are interested in helping make this project a reality, and have experience in development, design, or are a former Central Wiki Master, please head over to wizard404.com to apply. While Wizard 404 will be our main focus at first, support for Pirate 101 and other KingsIsle related media is planned for later down the line. Anyways, farewell for now, and see you soon.